Chapter 36. Synchronicity. I looked it up on the internet. Bye Bye Blackbird is a song from 1926. I had gone my entire life without hearing it, and then on the same night that Gloria and Trop sang it to me on the car ride home, Tony sang at a party, quite possibly at the very same time. Trop had a word for that. Synchronicity, he called it. It's when two related things occur without any apparent cause and effect. We were driving to the bridge studio, and I told him about the coincidence, leaving at the part about Cliff and Tony maybe kissing. He said that synchronicity was different from a mere coincidence. With synchronicity, you feel there's a definite connection. You just don't know what that connection is. I was reminded of something that had happened to me the year before, quite possibly another moment of synchronicity. I had never told anyone about it, not even Cliff, because it was really no big deal, although it did feel like a big deal at the time. There was a kid I knew in 3rd grade named Doug Bridges. He lived down the street from us. He only lived there for about a year, then his family moved away. He was one of those people you know for a short while and then forget about. I hadn't thought about him since the 3rd grade, but then, one day last year, I don't know why, I suddenly thought about him. I had a very vivid memory of my 3rd grade class going on a field trip to a bakery. Before we got on the bus, our teacher had us pair off. She told everyone to choose a buddy. Cliff and I were best friends even then, but I noticed Doug, the new kid, standing sadly alone, so I asked Doug to be my buddy. I remembered everyone in my class was given a freshly baked cookie at the bakery. 7 years later, when I suddenly found myself thinking about this incident, my memory was so strong I could smell the bakery and taste the cookie. That's it. No big deal. I had this memory flash, and most likely would have forgotten all about it, but the next day, my father asked me if I remembered Doug Bridges, who used to live on our street. He was killed in an automobile accident yesterday. Are you certain you didn't remember the bakery incident after you'd heard he had died? Trop asked me. I was sure. That's why it had seemed so weird. Synchronicity, he agreed. But just because there is no apparent cause and effect, it doesn't mean that one doesn't exist. We simply may be unable to perceive or comprehend the connection. Like when Captain listens to the radio, I said. Ha! He laughed, then said, exactly so. What about the fact that his last name was Bridges? I asked. What about it? And now I'm taking you to play bridge. He said that was a meaningless coincidence. For there to be synchronicity, it must feel like there's some sort of connection just beyond your grasp. Perhaps, he suggested, Doug Bridges at the instant of his death somehow thanked all the people who had been kind to him over his lifetime, by reminding them of their good deeds. I smiled. That was a nice idea, anyway. Chapman told me about an incident of synchronicity that had happened to him more than 50 years ago when he was in his early 20s. One night, he and a group of friends had been staying up late, drinking cheap wine as we contemplated our future. He had thought of something he had read in a book, about how the character traits we admire, kindness, generosity, honesty, all lead to failure, and the character traits we supposedly abhor, greed and selfishness and the like, are the character traits of successful people. He had tried to repeat the quote to his friends, but it didn't come out right. He couldn't quite remember it. He also couldn't remember where he had read it. It was still bugging him the next day. I was searching through my bookcases and all my boxes of books, hoping that if I saw the title it would jar my memory, when suddenly the phone rang, interrupting my search. The call was from a woman I hardly knew, someone who had never called me before. She wanted to know if I owned a copy of Cannery Row by John Steinbeck, and if so, could she borrow it? I felt a chill. I already knew what was coming next. Cannery Row was the book I had been trying to remember. And she just called out of the blue? I asked. Had you ever mentioned the book to her? No. I'd played against her a few times at bridge tournaments. That was it. Her name was Annabelle King. Her husband was a senator. He had taken the book from her because he thought Steinbeck was a communist. Trop had brought his copy of Cannery Row to the next tournament where he and Annabelle King agreed to play as partners.